Hello, I am Disparu, and I watched the Call of Duty Vanguard reveal in a bit of an unusual way in the fact that I watched the gameplay from the streamers first, and then only today went back and watched the developers talk about it. And I'm really glad I did it in that way, because the developers would have entirely ruined the experience. Not only were they going and talking about gameplay features which have existed since the beginning of time and are standard in an FPS, as if it was some amazing new feature that they'd just thought of, but also they got involved in this entire social commentary. They really went full Battlefield 5 and surpassed it. And you never go full Battlefield 5. That has no place in gaming. It has no place in a game reveal. And the fact that you thought you could do it and then crap on everyone that died in World War II because of it, I wasn't very impressed. But that's an entire topic on its own, and so in this video, I'm just going to do what the developers should have done in the first place. I'm going to talk about the game. Now, from the gameplay, I think the main takeaway for this entire game is, it's Modern Warfare. It is. I don't care what anyone says. Look, it's Modern Warfare in a different skin. You've got different guns, and maybe that's what you want. A lot of people weren't fans of Cold War. They didn't like that engine, and so now you're back onto the engine that you liked before. You've got everything back that you had before. You've got tac, sprint, and the rest. You've got the field of movement, mounting's all back, slide cancelling, everything you're used to. Fine. But really, I'm not sure that I want to live in a world where I'd agree with PC Gamer. This isn't a usual thing for me. Call of Duty Vanguard is Modern Warfare with wimpier guns. I can't disagree. That's what it looks like just from observing. And I kind of just want something a bit more original. Now, it did make me laugh when the developers just came out and said, yeah, we're taking some liberties with World War II, because I don't know how that's used in other areas of the world, but over here, that's not a good thing. That's not a compliment. You shouldn't freely be willing to admit that. But I'm going to start with the good stuff all the same. And the first one is, console's got a FOV slider. I know you guys have been asking for this for a long time, and although presumably it is going to be on the next generation consoles, we've got screenshots of it. There it is, field of view 120. Now consoles also can have their game look like they're staring at it through a fishbowl or a fisheye lens. If you wanted distortion, here you go, you can max that thing, but even the lower down, obviously it's more reasonable, and it is a great advantage. And that's not the only good thing about it. The moving control point is also something that I really like. Never been a fan of this static control point that is either just in one place and everyone just fights over one spot in the map the entire time, or it moves around into set spots and eventually you come up with your own spots where you hold this area and you can basically control the map with it. No, this one keeps on moving, and I like it because it really fights campers. Now you've got to sit on this spot which moves around, and it makes everyone else move around with it. So you use the entire map, all the different angles and everything else. It really just improves how dynamic the entire game is and the flow of the game. I think that's a really nice change. Combat pacing is also something I really like, although let's face it, this has been a standard feature of FPS in every other game except COD since the beginning of time. We've always been able to change the amount of players you have in maps, change your maps, and change the various different sizes of the maps. COD is late to the game in this, but it's a great addition all the same. I'm glad they are finally adding something like this. Well, before everyone would play on shipment, now by changing the various different sizes of the maps, cutting out different areas of them, and changing the amount of players which are allowed, now you can choose your own speed of the game. So now you can have that really fast shipment style of gameplay, which is always my preferred style of multiplayer game, or you can have just a more spread out game where the fights are a lot more few and far between. The other thing I like is that they've increased the amount of attachments up to 10. But I think this probably is just more cosmetic than anything else. They do say that some of the attachments are more powerful than others, and they think that increases their guns from 30 up to 100. Let's face it, that's not how that works. It doesn't matter if you allow something to be more powerful than something else. You've still only got 30 guns. Even if something changes it from a short-range gun to a long-range gun, still only got 30 guns. So I'm not going to let you get off with that one. But my other issue with this is that every single time there is always a mathematical benefit to this. There is always one single set of attachments which is the best. And we've found this out through so many games at this point, not just FPS, but MMOs as well. No matter how complicated you make a skill tree in an MMO, there is always an optimum build And that's what everyone uses. So while I do like that they've increased the customization, because it's player choice, I still know that at the end of the day, there's still only going to be one option. And if you don't choose that option, you're just going to be worse. Hey, maybe it's more fun. Maybe that's you. And if that's you, you do you. But still, a lot of people are just going to find the best build, and everyone's going to be using the same guns at the end of the day. And there's still another couple of good things that I like. There's 20 maps with 16 core maps, and 4 maps for the sort of peripheral modes, like the hill map that we saw on the PlayStation one. And the final thing that I'm not sure about is the caliber system. This is where essentially you've got one gun, but you can load in various different bullets into it. And obviously, we actually have this already. There's already in Warzone where you can do this on different guns, but they seem to have expanded this out to, I don't know if it's all guns or just some, but they said that they're trying to remove the ability to change damage and fire rate away from the developers onto the players. And I kind of like to know more about this because it sounds like balancing that could be a problem. If they still have the same fire rate, but now you're just firing thicker bullets, then I'm not sure how you're going to balance that. You're going to add more recoil in because people are still going to find the most optimum way, and it sounds like an incredible pain to balance that kind of thing. I don't even know how you're going to start with that. Let's face it, the balancing in COD that we've already seen in stuff like Warzone hasn't exactly been the best. It's basically them not trying to balance it, they're just trying to force on the next meta. And so when one gun is used a lot, they just nerf it and try and get another one to be used a lot for a short amount of time, and then they nerf that. And it's more focused on a rotating train rather than actually balancing. So maybe that's the plan with this. Maybe this allows them to do that easier. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their plan is, but it's an odd system that I think we'll have to really get our hands on to work out the effects of that one. The destruction. I don't even know why destruction is in this. Honestly, there's so many weird ideas in this that don't really seem to fit. It's almost like this is a technical test, and this is their first iteration that they're just trying to shove in and see what works. Like a live testing environment, just one you've got to pay for. And the destruction is probably the best example I've got. There's literally one where it's just a hole in the floor that you just shoot, and now it breaks completely, you can just fall through. What does that add? How does that change the flow of the map? Why is that not just a hole in the ground that you drop into? Because apart from the first 6 seconds of the game, that's what it is. It doesn't change the map flow of the game. All you've got is a hole that you've just made someone do a single action to get through the first time. And it's things like that which are just done to not add something, just so you can say you've changed something, which I don't understand. There's walls like this as well. You can see through them, you can shoot through them. But at the same time, you just sprint, and you run through them, break them, and they're never there for the rest of the map. What is the point? What has that changed? Now, to me, cover is a lot like your wedding night. If it's not hard, there's no point in having it in the first place. And so this is where I am with this cover. If you could just shoot through it, it's not cover. If you can run through it in one go, and then for the rest of the map, it's not there, why did it exist? What does it add to the map? Now, my favorite destruction system is Bad Company 2. Entire buildings were made out of this stuff with hard cover that you couldn't shoot through. But if you use the grenade launcher or a rocket, now you've blown a big hole in the wall. That is awesome. It changes the map. And over the course of the map, you would change the map from just a normal map with lots of buildings in to complete rubble. It was great. Now, the later Battlefields have moved on and they've really removed a lot of the destruction. Not a fan. But all of that makes this system look awful. I don't know why this exists. It doesn't add anything to the gameplay. And honestly, if it wasn't there, I don't think anyone would care at all. Now, I'm not a fan of mounting. I think guns should have recoil. I like to have skill in my FPS. What can I say? But the whole idea of not just changing mounting so that now you can move it across a wall, to completely and utterly remove any penalty for not having recoil on your guns, but now you'll be able to blind fire. And I mean blind fire in the loosest possible sense of the word, because you're not blind, but you can fire. Now, it says in the actual video that you can peek over the wall a little bit, but I don't think this is a clip of someone peeking a little bit. That's just full-on looking over the wall at something. You can see exactly what is going on there. You can see exactly where you're aiming. The only difference is you're not aiming down the sights. That's the only disadvantage that you've got. I don't understand what this is for, but even if you wanted to add blind firing, I don't know why it exists like this, because that's not blind anything. And all of this comes into one cohesive picture of I'm not sure why it exists in the game. And the next is obviously what we had recently added to Warzone. The perk to highlight people through walls. Now, in a game where you can shoot people through walls, highlighting them through walls is probably the most ridiculous thing you can add. But at least in Warzone, you can kind of get away with it. At least in Warzone, 3 seconds isn't that big a deal. And it's at such long range that actually you can probably get away. But in multiplayer where you can shoot through walls, multiplayer where you control the size of the maps, multiplayer where you can get to them in 3 seconds, and most fights are over in that time, this is probably the most stupid addition I've seen. No, you shouldn't have wall hacks. No, you shouldn't be adding wall hacks to your game. But if you're going to do it, adding it in your multiplayer mode is insanity. I don't know how this passed any kind of dev meeting. I don't know how anyone said, that sounds like a really bad idea. Stop it. Really. Stop it. And moving on to Warzone, moving on to the new map. We've seen some pictures, we've seen some short clips and a couple of overhead different views. Now, obviously, this isn't the entire map, but these pictures will be deliberately chosen to give us an idea of what the rest of the map looks like, give us an idea of their intention of how they want this game to play. And what can we tell? There's not many buildings. There's no cities to be seen, and most of it looks like farmland. Now, for me in Verdansk, I'm very open in the fact that anything sort of north of airport and anything sort of to the east of the built-up city, I'm not a fan of. Never have been. I don't like big open spaces. It's just all sniper territory and a load of people camping in a concealed position, waiting for people to inevitably be forced out into the open so they can just one-shot them in the face. So can you imagine what I think of a map which, as far as I can tell, as far as everything I've been shown, deliberately designed to be one massive map of farmland? This is all hills, big open spaces, and occasional buildings. There's not much cover, and I've always been a player that likes big, close-up fights. I'd rather be in a city, I'd rather be in a place like supermarket than a place like this. So, I really hope the rest of the map is different. This isn't really what I wanted at all. I was far more hoping for a big sort of city map like Paris or Stalingrad. Those would have been the areas that I would have thrived. But this is a disappointment to me. I'm not a fan of the big open spaces, and I can only hope that the areas we haven't seen have actually had a lot more work put into them. I'm not surprised that they've made a map like this. Making a map like this is easy. Big open spaces, fields, grass with some trees is far easier. It takes less talent. It takes less time. So I can understand why, as developers, they'd want to do this. It's just, as a player, my idea of hell. And finally, the big elephant in the room, the elephant in the room that has existed for the last 18 months, has got to be anti-cheat. Now, if anyone's followed me on Twitter, then you will know exactly my thoughts on this, and exactly my thoughts on how they are handling this entire situation. And it's not very complimentary. They're very proud. They say in the video, oh, we are releasing this in day one. We are going to have this exactly ready, finished, ready for you to use on day one of launch. But your anti-cheat isn't a launch feature. Your anti-cheat shouldn't be a sales feature. Your anti-cheat shouldn't be something that makes people excited about your new game. Unless it's your first one. Every FPS, as standard since the beginning of time, has had an anti-cheat. The fact that Warzone didn't have one kind of blew my mind. And the thing is, if your anti-cheat is ready on day one, then it will have been ready the day before. There will have been a time where you're like, okay, we've gone gold, we're not changing anything. And at that day, on that second, The instant that this anti-cheat is ready, it should be implemented in Warzone. In fact, I would go before that, even if it doesn't work very well. Even if it doesn't detect very many people. Even if it only detects one. As long as it's not actually detecting innocent players, then it should be put in immediately and iterated on over time. As long as you're not getting false positives, that's the only thing that matters. Because anti-cheat should be in the game, and it should be in the game as soon as possible. You shouldn't wait for an arbitrary launch date. What are you doing? Because every day that's not in the game, every hour, every second, your players are getting more annoyed. Your players are dying to hackers, and that, as an FPS company, is completely unacceptable. So what do I think of the game? If we ignore the developers and how they launched, how they spoke about it, and we look just at the actual game, at its features, overall, I think if you're happy with Modern Warfare, you'll like this as well. If you're a big fan of that COD and the multiplayer, you'll probably be a fan of this too. I am very, very concerned about my personal preference for what I would like Warzone to turn into. But if you're in Warzone and you're a big sniper fan, you're probably, again, going to be in for a very good time. So like you'd expect with the game, this seems to be very much personal preference. From my point of view, I don't think it changes enough. I don't think it's new enough for me to buy. But if you played Cold War and you're like, I really just wish we had Modern Warfare back, this is for you. If you play Warzone and you're the guy carrying the Swiss, then it looks like you're going to have a great time on the new map as well. So I think this is something where you'll be able to make up your own mind. I think there are very, very specific groups of people and their personal preferences that this is aimed at. I think different sorts of play will definitely like this more than someone like me. So if that's you, great. But for me, I don't know. I don't think I'll be buying this one myself unless something changes itself. And with Warzone, I just really need to see more, and I hope that changes my opinion on it overall. But for now, that's it from me. If you liked the video, press like, and let me know what you thought of COD Vanguard and the reveal down below. Are you excited for the multiplayer? Have you seen the new map, and what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, but for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.